blogspot.com and unauthorized.tv. Well, thanks for tuning in. Good to see you. It's been a while. I have been extremely busy. I've also been on vacation of sorts. I've tried streaming before on vacation, but the schedule I ended up on just didn't work, especially in combination with all the activity on the various fronts and so forth. But everything's going extremely well, and I hope this finds you well too. So let's talk about possibly one of the most unusual moves by President Trump so far. And it's really amazing to me that people are not taking more notice of this. But to me, the cancellation of the Republican convention, the Republican National Convention, is just an astonishing act. And it really makes me feel very hopeful, because it shows that the president is willing to do whatever it takes, that he's not beholden to tradition. He is not concerned about what the press says. And what's really interesting is basically nobody said anything. Nobody said anything at all. And if you look at how strange this supposed presidential race is, which is not even a race, Biden's not campaigning. There's literally no campaign taking place. 100 days away from the election, and nobody is campaigning. And so I think that there is a better than zero chance that the left is correct and that the elections are going to be canceled for some reason. I don't know what that reason might be. I don't know what the justification will be, but what we know is that basically no one's going to do anything. I mean, what's going to happen? People are going to start rioting in the streets of Portland and Minneapolis. They've already done that. And it strikes me that all of this civil unrest is providing the God Emperor with a perfect excuse to do what he should do and cancel the presidential election, because there's so much fraud. There's so much nonsense. There's so much just complete fiction going on. And now everybody knows it. Now, of course, there's going to have to be some sort of accounting, some sort of explanation, or so forth. But, and I'm not saying that this is anything that is necessary. Frankly, at this point, I think there's a good chance that the Democrats would prefer to see that happen, because they would rather shriek for 4 years about how Donald Trump is an illegitimate president than to see their dementia-ridden candidate go down to the biggest defeat since Walter Mondale. I mean, I personally would love to see Trump pound Biden and crush him in the Trump slide that I've been anticipating since 2016. But someone says, why not just have the election fairly? Because it might not be possible to have a fair election. We already know that the mail-in vote is full of fraud. I don't think that we realize how bad the fraud is. And what may come out is that the fraud has been so bad that Clinton and Obama and everybody since Carter hasn't been elected legitimately. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it goes. And I'm just giving you a potential warning. I'm not warning you that it's going to happen. I'm warning you that it is more possible than any of us probably think. I think that there's a lot of crazy stuff going on, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. And the thing is, I think it would be great for the United States to end this sham democracy. There is no democracy in the United States. There's not supposed to be any democracy in the United States. And to the extent that there is democracy in the United States, it's been entirely corrupting. And so, there's all kinds of stuff going on behind the scenes that I know nothing about, that you know nothing about. But what we do know is that The world is well into the realm of crazy. And so we should learn to expect the crazy. I mean, right now, Britain is in a complete state of meltdown because this weekend they decided that, literally overnight, they decided that anyone who's coming back from Spain has to quarantine for 14 days. Now, what you may not realize is the Brits vacation very heavily in Spain. And on top of that, they were under lockdown for months. So the lockdown just ended. Hundreds of thousands of people immediately went to Spain. And then they find out with literally 4 hours notice that if they can't leave Spain in 4 hours, they're going to be quarantined at home for 14 days. So they can't work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyhow, it's crazier than we think. And so we should learn to anticipate the unthinkable. And it's going to be fascinating. And I think that we should just learn to enjoy the ride. We're not in the boring parts of history, which is both good and bad. So, that's enough on the titular topic. The other topic, of course, that I have to address is what's been going on with the Patreon situation. And I'm trying to think about what's the best way that I can put this. I don't think anyone who works at Patreon or for Patreon in the legal department knows anything about California law. And I'm not saying that just because they've changed the terms of use twice in the last 3 weeks. I'm saying that because as I do, I read the terms of use and I went over the changes and stuff. It's very obvious why they're doing the changes. They're doing the changes. They made the changes because they are trying to drag the people who are filing arbitrations against them based on their deceptive practices. They're trying to figure out a way to drag them into court. Well, guess what? You should be very, very careful about what you ask for. Most people, what's that line from that Metallica song? Be careful what you wish. Be careful what you say. Be careful what you wish. Be careful. You just might get it. Be careful what you say. You might regret it. Something like that. And the reason is this. The reason that they try to force people into court, well, let me back up a second. The reason that they try to force people into arbitration is because court has class action. And class action is inexpensive for the individual, claimant, but it's very expensive for the companies. So in order to avoid class action, what they try to do is they force people into arbitration. Well, then you have the tactic of mass individual arbitration, which doesn't cost the consumer very much and can be very expensive for the company again. So what they try to do is they try to have it both ways. But here's the thing. The California Supreme Court has ruled that a contractual agreement to waive the right to a jury trial entered into prior to any dispute between the contracting parties is unenforceable under the California Constitution and Section 631 of the California Code of Civil Procedure. Grafton Partners versus Superior Court, California Supreme Court, August 4th, 2005. So what that means is that not only is it impossible to waive your right to, separately, it's impossible to waive your right to a class action litigation. You always have the right to class action litigation in California, regardless of what the terms of use say. And you also always have the right to a jury trial. So when Patreon says in their terms of use, you agree that you are waiving your right to a jury trial and you are waiving your right to a group action, it's just complete bullshit. It's completely false. their contract is invalid on its face. And here's what the California Supreme Court also says about this. As stated in Civil Code section 1668, all contracts which have for their object, directly or indirectly, to exempt anyone from responsibility for his own fraud or willful injury to the person or property or another, or violation of law, whether willful or negligent, are against the policy of the law. Discover Bank versus Superior Court, again, 2005 Supreme Court. And so they're just making this stuff up. In fact, what I believe has actually happened is that the terms of use are probably copied from terms of use in a different state, probably New York, because the way that the contract is set up is actually much more akin to a New York contract than to California. And so they've got stuff in there that is completely and utterly unenforceable in the very jurisdiction that they have to deal with. And so anyhow, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. And I'm actually quite optimistic that the judge is going to come back soon. As I mentioned before, the tentative ruling, which is a very, very clear indicator of what the final ruling is going to be, is just devastating. And it's one of the reasons why they've changed the terms of use twice in the last 3 weeks. So, so it's going to be, I mean, personally, I am, the more that I learn about the situation, the more I'm astonished that they chose to try to fight this at all. I mean, and the funny thing is, I was talking to one of the folks that's been handling the arbitrations, and apparently one of the Patreon lawyers was going around saying things like, well, we had the hearing and we feel like it went really well for us. And I'm thinking, well, maybe if you thought the judge was actually going to order your beheading during the hearing, I mean, that's about the only possible way that you could say that it went well, that it went better than expected. I mean, the judge didn't actually order the capital punishment of any of Patreon's lawyers. So, that was a really pretty good result, unexpectedly good result, I guess. And it's just, I mean, if any game company was this sloppy, the hackers would have completely devastated their entire virtual currency and their entire honor system and exploited every last inch that could possibly be exploited. I mean, I think my favorite thing was reading, there was something, I can't remember it, but I was sent by one of the lawyers, I was sent a quote about me. And it was just, they said something like, well, Voxday said that game designers would run rings around lawyers. Yeah, we would. You know why? Because we actually read the rules. I don't even know what these people do. I mean, their lawyers have been running around. Their entire case is saying that Patreon has the right to police people off the platform. Most of the people who have been kicked off Patreon, whether it's Milo, whether it's Owen, whether it's Sargon, most of the people who have been kicked off Patreon were kicked off for things that they did that had nothing to do with Patreon. They got kicked off for Instagram posts or for Facebook posts or for Twitter posts. And if you actually read their community guidelines, you can see that that's not what they claim at all. They claim, I don't know whether it's legitimate or not, I don't know whether it would stand up or not, but what they claim is not entirely unreasonable. What they claim is that if you take money to do something specific, and that specific something that you do is against our terms of use, then we can punish you for that. So for example, if you were to set up a Patreon account and say, I am going to use the money that you give me to go and murder Inuit people, and you use the money to purchase a gun, and you then go and start shooting at Inuit people, they could claim, you used Patreon for the money to do something that was illegal and against our community guidelines, and we're going to kick you off the platform. I don't think anybody would have a problem with that. I personally would not have a problem with that. Is that an action on Patreon? No, it's not. It's an action up wherever up in northern Canada or something. But it's directly related to what you were doing on Patreon. It's funded specifically by that. But nobody funds your Twitter account. Twitter's free. Nobody funds your YouTube videos. YouTube is if you're successful enough, you're monetized on YouTube. Nobody funds your Facebook posts, your Instagram posts. It's totally ridiculous. And so, again, what we see is that nobody at Patreon, not the lawyers, not the trust and safety, not the executives, no one there even knows what they actually have the right to do or not do. And so they just make this stuff up. And like we know now, they make this stuff up without even knowing what the relevant law says. And so, I'm beginning to understand why the whole process has taken so long, because it's quite clear that nobody there has any idea what's going on. So, anyhow, that's what's going on. You guys can go ahead and fire up super chats if you like. If you've got any questions, I suppose we probably got a few after a week off. Daniel Pereira says, sounds like somebody at one of the other platforms informed Patreon that they had thought criminals to demonetize. Oh, we already know that. PayPal not only deplatformed Big Bear, but they actually sent emails to Patreon, which Patreon then forwarded to Big Bear, saying that they couldn't use PayPal for him. So they already knew. So anyhow, that's pretty much what's been keeping me busy, just trying to keep up with what the lawyers are doing, with what the folks are doing with their arbitrations and all that. And so Zodiacal Lightsbear says, trust and safety teams have a lot of back channel communication going on. Oh, they absolutely do. It's really remarkable finding out how much chatter there is back and forth between the companies. And there's actually a fair amount of employment movement. There was a woman who went from Twitter to Indiegogo to Google, just boom, 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 and trust and safety all the way. And so that's why these bad business practices get imported from one company to the next, and it's all very incestuous. It's the same group of midwits, and so as far as how things are going generally, everything's going extremely well, and it's it's just a matter of time, before the whole thing is brought to an end, in my opinion, one way or another. Because I just, like I said, they claim to want to do battle in court, and so I don't see any reason why the legal legion shouldn't give them exactly what they want. Probably a little more of it than they're expecting. Probably a little bit more than they imagine. Zoomer Bear says, just finished Watership Down. Thanks for recommending. Was hooked from the Warren of Snares. Yeah, Watership Down is one of the greatest books of all time. No question about it. It's interesting to me that Richard Adams never wrote anything that was anywhere nearly that good again. Maybe because he wasn't really writing it. Speaking of Patreon, what is this month's book? We're going to get that settled tomorrow and get it out to you guys. We're running late. Congratulations, Bandman, on the new Darkstream loyalty badge. We need to get some new badges up. I can't believe we blew through them already. So, time to get some new ones. Serene Sapphire said Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law has a good commentary in this case. Yeah, he does, and a lot of people have commented on how some of the cases are, some of the takes on it are a little excessively based on Mike Cernovich's take. That's a fair point. That's a fair criticism. What I will say is that neither Mike nor any of the commentators are privy to the full tentative ruling. And so Mike's take on it is essentially correct, but it's actually very conservative and very toned down compared to the actual state of things. So, and that's gonna come out pretty soon. I think I would not be surprised if the judge issued his ruling this week. So that would be nice. Legionnaire Bear says, can you address Q being mass banned from Twitter? Seems like it's only going to bring legitimacy to the movement. Well, that's true, but it's a short-term tactical move. They're trading legitimacy for a long-term legitimacy for a short-term tactical advantage because they're still hoping to stop Trump, but they're not going to. And so, but this is an all-hands-on-deck thing for the Prometheans and for the globalists. They're losing everywhere. Nobody believes them anymore. Even the people who used to be the heavy Kool-Aid drinkers are beginning to feel doubts about, gee, is this really the future? Is burning down, is a bunch of young white idiots